good to be with you. I love Christmas. It's my favorite time. Church time, it's my favorite family time. It's my favorite just time period. So I'm so honored and thankful to be spending, I did the counting today, Christmas number 7 here in Harlingen with you at St. Albans, many more ahead. So it's great to worship on Christmas with you all. It's an honor. I want to just do something with our gospel reading today. I want to change one word and see if it changes the picture in your head of where Jesus was born. Because I don't know if this ever, if you ever read it like this and were wondering, like, well, why did that happen, right? When they say she gave birth to her firstborn son and wrapped him in bands of cloth and laid him in a manger because there was no place for them in the inn. Like the manger because the inn was full. I don't know, that connection just, it's not instant in my head, like, and maybe it's just because of the time we live in. I think, well, if Hampton Inn is full, my next step isn't the barn, right? There's like places in between there, but when they were writing the gospel and the gospel writers, you know, everything that they wrote made sense to them. It just was obvious, right? She laid him in the manger because there was no room in the inn. But that word inn, in the original language, what if I told you it meant guest room? If I told you it meant guest room, would that maybe change the story a little bit? Now the word does mean guest room, and it's the only time in the entire Bible that word appears and they translate it as inn. Every other time it's guest room. And so I would think guest room maybe makes a little bit more sense because you might have a guest room in your house. Maybe somebody's staying there for Christmas. Right now, Joseph was going back to Bethlehem to be in his hometown. So we assume his parents or family were there, or whoever, living relatives, certainly. That's why he's going back. The law wasn't that people went back to like where their family came from to be registered. Think of Joseph like a college student. He's going back to his hometown because that's where he's got to vote, or that's where he's got to renew his driver's license, or that's where he's got to do those things. Joseph is a carpenter, and he travels for his work, but his home base, right, he never updated his mailing address. It was still Bethlehem, where he grew up. So Joseph has to go back to Bethlehem to register because that's technically where he lives. And his intention in bringing Mary with him is that Mary and Joseph are going to go live in Bethlehem with his family. That was the custom of the time. You married, when someone was married, you went and lived with the husband's family. So parents would say when they had daughters, they would give away their daughters to another family. When they had sons, they would accept someone else's daughter into their family. It was just how it worked back then. So the idea is Joseph is going, this is his hometown, and this is where he's planning on starting a life with his wife. But when they go, I'm going to assume the family house is full, even the guest room. There's no room. So there's this space in houses in the first century that would be kind of like our garage, right? It's where they kept the animals at night. It's where they might store stuff, and it's where they fed the animals. It had mangers. Mangers were just feeding troughs for animals. So if you had a donkey and maybe another animal, they'd be out during the day, but at night you'd bring them in so people didn't steal them. Just like you might do with your cars, you put them in your garage, and then that's where they would eat and they could rest, and there'd probably be hay and places where they could stay. And the story I see happening as Mary and Joseph go back to Joseph's hometown. He goes to his family home, either his parents or grandparents or multi-generations are living in this home, and it's full. And there's no real space for this young woman to, in privacy, with dignity, give birth. Because the Jewish world, you would not give birth in a room that had 4 cousins and 3 aunts staying in with you, right? There's some privacy required to this. And so you might ask, well, why wouldn't someone give up their room so that Mary and Joseph could have that room? And I would agree with you 100%, but I would tell you that in the first century in the Jewish culture, grandpa gets the room before pregnant Mary. It's just the way it works. I'm not saying it's right. I'm not saying it should have been that way, but it's just the way it works. Elders get the bedrooms. And Mary was young, and Joseph, they were young, so, she could have the baby in the garage room where the animals were kept. And if we think about it like that, it makes a little more sense of why it's just a connection to them of, well, she laid him in the manger because the guest rooms were full. There were no beds or anything, so they just kind of made a bed for Jesus right in the manger. And if we think about Jesus being born this way, there's a couple things that might change. So I want to just spend the rest of our time briefly talking about three things that it maybe changes the story a little bit. One for Jesus, and then two for us. The first one is it means Jesus wasn't born alone, but surrounded by family, even though it might have not been ideal. There were probably midwives there, or at least women who had had children before. Mary was a first-time mom. There's no OBGYNs in this day and age, right? So Mary is relying on those who have had children before to come and kind of walk her through this process. And at least the thought that she had some relatives there that were doing that for her gives me a little comfort, even if they're in the garage doing it. But Jesus was surrounded by family. And if you think about the things that Jesus didn't have when he was born, the things that God didn't feel were a necessity for Jesus to have upon birth, wealth, prestige, power, reputation, all that stuff, right? Pedigree, right? Resume, all that stuff. Jesus didn't have any of that, but he did have family. It was important to the Father that his son be born in a family. And so this is where we can think about what it means for us and maybe for a moment just appreciate with gratitude the gift of family. If we have it today, and if we have it with us, we're celebrating Christmas with family. Our family members are healthy and well, just to be grateful. Family is a gift. It's a gift from God. Now, it might not always feel like a gift. We might not always be full of gratitude whenever our family members come and stay in our guest room, but it's a gift. And if you were to ask someone who doesn't have a family member still with us, they would be the first one to tell you that. Appreciate it while you have it. Family is a gift. Just a note, I recognize anytime on Christmas we have a church full of people, that there are going to be people who say, I know, but it doesn't feel that way this year. That might have a heavy heart. This may be a first Christmas after losing someone. This may be a first Christmas with the family not being together, or there might be a rift in the family, or something that is weighing really heavily. And I don't know that I have words to just fix that. I'm positive I don't. But I think Jesus being born in a family even helps with that too, because he knows and he sees the pain that you're feeling. I don't know that it makes it better, but it's a little comfort to know that the Son of God went through the family stuff we go through. And he went through annoyance. He went through times when people just weren't understanding him or getting along. He went through times where maybe his parents didn't quite understand him and what he was called to do. He went through loss. We know by the time Jesus is an adult, Joseph has passed away. He's been there through loss and pain and disagreements, all of it. He sees you. He sees you. Let that be a comfort, that he sees you and he knows that pain. It might not fix it, but know that he sees you. And I can promise you one day, his will for all of us is that we're with him in a place where those losses are gone, where those rifts are mended, where that pain is healed. But until then, if your heart's heavy this Christmas, I just want you to know Jesus had a family and he sees the pain. And so cast your cares on him. And then the last thing I wanted to mention, thinking about it a little more personally, what it means to think about Jesus being born in that garage room. Now, I don't know what you think of when you think of garages. I don't think of it as like a livable space in my house. My grandpa was a hoarder extraordinaire, and the garage was full of all his I'm going to get to that one day projects. Right? You couldn't fit a car in his garage, but you could fit 5 bicycles that he was going to repair one day. Right? 8 lawnmowers that just needed a little work, and they would work again one day. Right? It was full of all his I'm going to get to that one day stuff. And when I think of garages, right, that's just kind of what we do. We kind of stick stuff in there, and we'll get to it later. We'll get to it another time. And there's a thought that maybe if we think of our heart like a house, sometimes we might put Jesus in the garage on occasion, not intentionally, and not with any malice, right? But we got stuff. We'll get to it. We'll get to it. Maybe we had thought about taking a step in our faith and doing something different this year, or adding a practice, or doing something that might help us grow in our faith. And we thought about doing it, but we'll get to it. We'll get to it. There's just a lot of stuff. Stick it in the garage for now. So I want to encourage you as we think about Jesus and being born into that super full house on the first Christmas in Bethlehem, kind of being in their garage space, right, where the animals were kept and fed. Where do we keep Jesus? If our heart was a home, where would he be now? And I just want to encourage you that if he's maybe in the garage or on the front lawn or somewhere, we might let him into the guest room and take this Christmas as an opportunity to open our hearts and let him in. So I would encourage you to be grateful for the gift that family is, if you have it, to cast your sorrow to him if this is a Christmas where your heart is heavy, and to think about the home of your heart and where Jesus is in it. This would be the perfect time to move him into the guest room. In the name of God, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen.